Today, I'll be educating you on the structure of the brain and the functions of each part. The brain is made up of 7 parts and 4 lobes. The parts consist of the amygdala, the brainstem, the cerebellum, the cerebrum, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the thalamus. The 4 lobes are the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. What are their functions? First, I will explain the amygdala. The amygdala is located deep in the temporal lobes of the brain and is part of the limbic system. The functions of this part of the brain is the emotional reactions to things like fear and anger, and it controls aversive cues like sweaty palms. This part of the brain has a large role in the process of memorizing things and is usually associated with mental conditions like depression, anxiety, and even autism. The amygdala is larger in male brains and is the shape of an almond. It is bigger in the brains of sociopaths and smaller in the brains of the elderly. The brainstem. The brainstem is the part of the brain which conjoins with the spine. This part of the brain takes care of the basic things we need to survive, like breathing, sleeping, and digesting food and things like that. This part of the brain is developed first in humans. What is a cerebellum? The cerebellum is 2 mounds of folded tissue that's located at the top of the brainstem. The cerebellum is the main controller of things that take skill and coordination. It also regulates fear and pleasure responses. The cerebellum doesn't control your movements, but it controls your accuracy and timing. The cerebrum. This part of the brain is the biggest. It takes up 2/3 of the entire brain. The cerebrum is separated into 2 halves called the cerebral hemispheres. It's separated by a groove that starts at the back of your head all the way to your forehead. These halves are connected by long neuron branches called the corpus callosum, which is bigger in women's brains. This huge part of our brain controls our state of consciousness, the body's motor skills, our senses, our reasoning, and our language. The hippocampus. The hippocampus is used for memories, which we store for the long term. If the hippocampus didn't exist, we would be stuck in the past memories and we wouldn't be able to live in the present. This part of the brain, in my opinion, is one of the most important because who wants to be stuck in the past? Getting this damage also leads to Alzheimer's. The hypothalamus. This part is located at the base of the brain. It is where signals from the brain and the body's hormonal systems interact. The hypothalamus controls the body's body temperature and blood pressure. It also controls the body's appetite and weight. And lastly, the thalamus. This is located at the very top of the brainstem. This works as a 2-way relay station. The thalamus works with sorting and processing the signals from the spinal cord up to the cerebrum, and the signals from the cerebrum down to the spinal cord all the way down to the nervous system. Now for the lobes of the brain. You know how I said earlier about the cerebral hemispheres? Well, both of these hemispheres are divided into 4 lobes. For a recap of what I said in the intro, the 4 lobes are the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. What are the functions of these lobes? Well, the frontal lobe is located at the front of the brain. Obviously, the lobe is associated with motor skills, reasoning, and expressive language. At the back of the frontal lobe is the motor cortex. This area of the brain receives information from all the different lobes and uses the information to carry out movements. Next is the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe is located in the middle section of the brain. It is used for processing tactile sensory information, including things like pressure, touch, and pain. A part of the brain called the somatosensory cortex is located in this lobe. This controls the processing of the body's senses. The third lobe is the temporal lobe. It lies on the bottom section of the brain. This lobe is the place where the auditory cortex is located, which is really important for hearing and language. The hippocampus is located in this lobe. So if we damage it, it's fatal for our memories, speech, and our language. The very last lobe is the occipital lobe. This lobe is located at the back part of the brain and is used for interpreting visual information. This lobe is the primary visual cortex, which receives information from the retina of our eyes. Damage to this lobe can lead to not being able to see properly and not being able to recognise objects, colours, and shapes. This was just a basic outline of the lobes and the parts of the brain that we need to survive and work. Obviously, there's endless information about the brain that I've missed out, but this was just a basic outline of how amazing the brain is.